Thank you very much. My name is Tim. I'm an alcoholic. My date of sobriety is the 24th of July 1993, which is, to save you doing the maths, over 31 years ago. It is clearly God's will that I be here because I go with the tablecloth. Look, I literally don't have a garment which goes better with this extraordinary plastic tablecloth than what I'm wearing. And I don't normally wear this top, so make of that what you will. Now, if you were listening, and I only know 3.5 people in the room, so nice to meet lots of people I've never seen before. The reading, short as it was, if you were listening carefully, you'll realise contained the word God. If you don't like God or talk about God, that's fine. Still very welcome in AA. I'm very glad you're here, and I hope you find a solution that works for you. Maybe you already have. It's wonderful. And if you don't like hearing about God, you can get your phone out and, I don't know, look at something. Practice your irregular French verbs or times tables or something. It'll be over very soon. My alcoholism is impervious to any ordinary human measures. The human measures that I first tried were my own. Pulling together my resolve following weeks or months or sometimes years of very bad consequences, I would say, I'm never going to do that again. That's the end of it. And it was the end of it until it wasn't. Because my problem is that when I want to stay sober, I can stay sober. But then as soon as a little voice comes into my head that says, I'd like a drink, please, I don't realise that it's my alcoholism prompting me. It comes to me as though it's my own voice, and I think I want to drink. Now, if you look at the roster of harms I did to myself and I did to others from my drinking, and often at the end how rotten the drinking itself was, let alone the consequences the next day, let alone the consequences across the broad panoply of my life, I would be having a rotten time. At the beginning of my drinking, there would be the occasional bullet in the barrel of the Russian roulette. At the end of my drinking, there were 6 bullets in the barrel. So I did not enjoy my drinking at the end. People say I liked the effect, that's why I did it. I did at the beginning, but I did not like the effect at the end, and yet it still seemed like a good idea. And even when the evening was, as they say, going south, I would pursue it to its inevitably bitter end, regardless of the fact I knew if I carry on drinking now, it's going to just get worse. If I haven't had the little click that says everything is okay, I'm not going to get it. Past a certain point, you know you're just getting even more physically drunk, less able to get yourself home, more likely to cause a fight, more likely to end up in Newbury Park, more likely to do any of those other fright if you're from Newbury Park now. But I think it's safe to mention it, it's far enough away. Even then, I knew I was condemned to continue drinking on that occasion. So, after years of experience like that, it would be impossible for me to want to drink. Therefore, if the desire to drink is within me, it is not my desire to drink, it is my alcoholism's desire to drink. But it's in my own voice, which is the problem. The problem, therefore, is not the desire to drink, because being an alcoholic, my alcoholism is incurable, which means it's always going to be there, which means there is always a little bit of my brain that is simply now programmed to shoot up to the command and control centre the notion of having a drink. It's not stupid, it's not trying to kill me, It's just programmed. It's not thinking. It doesn't care. It's not like there's a little person inside there with a will. It's just how my brain is now baked. It wants a drink. That little bit of my brain wants a drink, and it wants a drug, and it wants all sorts of other things. And it will periodically get tiresome and send up the command. And that command will not have a little health warning attached to it. There is something about the command and control centre in my mind which simply becomes mesmerised by those thoughts and is unable to handle them with any kind of critical thinking whatsoever. It's like the bouncer at a club who checks the name very carefully against the list of the people in the queue, or checks what they're wearing to see if they're suitable. But certain people come along, they're just flagged through into the VIP room. That's my mind when it comes to a thought of a drink or a thought of a drug or a thought of a number of other things. It is unable to assess the situation critically, flags it through, and we all go off and have a drink. And what I know from this is that I must not be in charge of my life when, at any point. Why? Because I don't know when that thought is going to arise. If I don't know when it's going to arise, I must have an alternative way of living 24 hours a day. In the same way that, you leave your car outside your house locked at all times because you don't know when someone is going to try and steal it. It needs to be locked at all times. So my mind needs to be locked onto a different course at all times. And that line in the big book I find immensely useful. And I'm going to, if I can recall it, unpack it. This being who presides over us all, well, whether or not that being presides over other people, I must act like it does, to remind myself that it is not me that presides over everyone. I grew up in a household which was affected by alcoholism in a number of different ways. And one of the features of growing up in such a household is a tendency to be super observant about everything that is going on around one and to make extraordinary efforts to bring everything in line. And I will read the news and know exactly what everyone ought to do. I actually don't watch the media anymore. Nothing. No newspapers, no television, no radio, no online shit, no social media, nothing. Because Dr. Bob, in Dr. Bob's Nightmare, as his chapter is called, so melodramatic, so unlike him as well. Anyway, it says in there about drinking that there's nothing wrong with drinking, but he abused it so frightfully, the privilege has been withdrawn. And my interest in what other people are getting on with, how the world is doing, what the future might look like, trends in society, other people's behaviour, people who think differently than me, my interest in those became so overpowering. I've abused that. And so the privilege has been withdrawn. I'm to mind my own business now. My sponsor reminds me. My higher power reminds me. When I ask God for direction every day, when the corrective measures come through for how I'm to live today, almost invariably there's an awful lot in there about mind your own business. Because God is and God's saying, I've got everything covered. You literally do not need to keep one eye open at all times to see what's going on around you, in your home group, at work, in your industry, in your country, in the world, in the universe. I've got it covered. It will free up your whole afternoon. Meanwhile, here are some things for you to do. I have a list of things to do I look at every morning. I've literally never got to the bottom of that. If I ever get to the bottom of that, I can say to God, give me something else to do. And if he says interfere in other people's lives, maybe I will. But whilst I've still got things to do, then even if it's right for me to go and take part in things in the world, I've got a list of things to do. I'm going to do those first. So this God who presides over us all certainly must preside over me. Now that is an offensive notion, because what about self-determination and autonomy and being a grown-up in Western civilization? The thing is, I don't think there's any such thing as personal autonomy, because one's got to follow some voice. If it's not the voice outside, if it's not the voice of God, it's going to be the voice of self. And I'm not going to get into the philosophy of whether one should listen to the voice of self, but there's a wonderful line in the 12 and 12 where it says, setting aside the philosophy, let's look at the results we have got personally from living on the basis of self. And a number of years into AA, I was in my mid-30s, which is a very long time ago now. I was in my mid-30s, and I was discussing with someone this question of self-will versus God's will. And he said, do you want to be happy? And I said, yes, please. And he said, have you been trying to be happy all your life? Yes. Are you happy? No. Are you willing to admit that your plan has failed? If you get to 30, 35, 40, and what you want is peace, power, happiness, and a sense of direction, and you don't have one, when exactly do you think your plan was going to kick in? Another 6 months? I had to recognise I had failed. Let's try something different. There's a wonderful line in We Agnostics where it says about material stuff, if your gadget's broken, you throw it out, get a new one. If the idea doesn't work, you throw it out, you get a new one. This idea of me constructing a list of all of the facts and circumstances of my life and how they should be arranged, and if only I can arrange my life that way, only I can have a certain partner, I have the mortgage in place, have the investments in place, have a so-called career, whatever that is. Very modern word. It didn't exist for thousands of years. People were fine without it. Suddenly we have to have a career now, apparently. Unless I get those things, I won't be happy. That was how I lived. Design your life and then go and get it. There are lots of books and magazines and people you can pay money to tell you how to organise your life, how to organise your affairs, all the things you should go for, and when you get those, you'll be happy. And we live in a society where everyone has anxiety and is stressed and is drugged. So that's how well, let's leave the society. So that did not work for me. That left me drugged and anxious and stressed and waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning and generally having a horrible time thinking, if only, and then there's a list of things, if only these were sorted out, I would be okay. Not recognising 10 years earlier, I had an entirely different list of, if only these things were sorted out, I'll be okay. I got those things, I wasn't okay, because the ego says, right, we've done those, very good, well done, here's the new list of things. And then you get the things, and they don't work. They don't bring the peace they were designed to bring, or you're frightened of losing them. So money, for instance, I've not found to be the answer to a fear of financial insecurity. If you haven't got it, you want it. Once you've got it, you're frightened of losing it. And then you have to pedal harder to maintain the life that you built up, thinking, if only I can have this nice middle-class life, then everything is going to be absolutely fine. That will protect me from the world somehow. Like, bad things never happen to middle-class people, so you need to have an amazing career, loads of money, loads of stuff, and then you'll be fine. And you get that stuff, and the wolves are still at the door, snarling through the letterbox. And every time you look at the newspapers, inflation happens, and then boom, where did your investments go? The thing that was supposed to keep you happy. So that whole system, I had to recognise, maybe fine for other people, it's failed for me. I work in an office where I've got my little desk in the corner. I work for myself, but I have some space, and there are other people who've got their own businesses. And there are people there, they're so successful and they're so unhappy. They they scrub up very well, but I get into the office very early, and some of them come in a little bit after me, like 6:45, 7 o'clock. And you get the real story then. You say, well, I'm really stressed and I'm worried about this. And they never get to the point that they think they're going to get to. Once I get this little job out of the way, once this presentation is out of the way, but then there's something else. I need something else to live by than that system. And the answer is this Father of Light who presides over us all. A couple of things. Father of Light is very, very helpful to me because I came into AA not just with a nasty dose of fulminant alcoholism, but with, frankly, mental illness and all sorts of other things that were wrong. When I was new, people would, and I'm not exaggerating here, form a little queue after the meeting to give me advice about how to sort my life out, because clearly there was something very wrong with me and my sharing was disturbing people and disrupting meetings. So that was the state I came in as. And I spent years trying to do something with that darkness. And all that happened was if you stare long enough into the darkness, it grows eyes, and the eyes in the darkness start staring back. The way to get rid of darkness is to turn on the light, and then the darkness is gone. And that's exactly what the steps did. Not a psychological inventory, but a moral inventory. Not figuring out how I got this way, not tracing everything back forensically a la Miss Marple back to my parents and what they did wrong, but to go and make amends, go and pay back the money, go and apologise. No big deal, just quiet, simple apologies. No Channel 5 dramas, just simple. I got it done. I forgave everyone for everything by recognising that when people behave badly, this is the case for me too, I'm in a state of temporary insanity. No one sane would do anything to harm anyone else. If anyone's harmed me, and they genuinely have, then they were temporarily insane. I must forgive them. I must excuse them. Forgiveness is for the inexcusable, but everything can be excused on the basis of this temporary insanity business. True for me. Now, I could forgive other people. I could forgive myself. I made amends, and I spent the last however many years seeking to be of service to God. Now, I have an occupation. I have a home. I'm married, amazingly. Very happily. I have those things, but the chief thing is to do God's will, which is nothing that elevates me above anyone else at all, because I think God has a will for everyone, and it's whatever happens to be in front of me to do. The things to do today are God's will. People say, what's God's will? I have to go to Nepal. You don't have to go to Nepal. Go to your flat and see what needs doing. Go to your emails and see what needs replying to. Go to your texts, see who's asked you to do something, do the things people have asked you to do, when they asked you to do them, how they asked you to do them, and then shut up, stop expecting thanks. Just look for the next thing to do. So this turning to the Father of Light who presides in all things sounds very fancy. It simply means every morning waking up and saying to God, please tell me what to do. This is the AA meditation. It's not detaching from my thoughts, it's thinking actively, applying spiritual principles, applying the principles of the book to literally what must I do today and what attitude must I take to each of those things. So when I've got a problem, a psychological problem, the answer is asymmetrical to the problem, because the problem, when it's psychological, really resides upstream in the spiritual. I've come into conflict with reality. I've seen something I don't like, because it's not the way I would have it. The problem is an authority problem over reality. I think I've got authority over reality, and reality failed to ask me how things should be, and now I'm upset or frightened. What is fear? The belief I won't get my own way. That's all. Spoiled child looking into the future. And the truth is, if I reconcile myself to whatever is and say, well, so be it, end of problem, I don't believe in the existence of problems anymore. Every problem is either a situation I can do nothing about, in which case it's not a problem, it's a fact. And I've accepted many unpleasant facts over the years, and whatever present apparent problem is a fact, I shall accept it the way I've accepted other things. If I can do something about it, it's not a problem, it's a call to action. If I don't know what to do, I can ask someone. If I still don't know what to do, I can wait. That means I can't do anything about it. If I don't know what to do, I can't do anything about it because I don't know what to do. So that becomes a fact. Everything resolves one way or the other. Facts, calls to action. So it's impossible for me to have a problem. If I'm holding the problem, I have not turned to the Father of Light who presides over all things to solve it. There was a wonderful AA speaker who said, I'm going to finish on this, who said it's impossible for him to have a problem. He turns it over to God, and now God has the problem. And God's got a very good track record of solving problems. God has solved my alcoholism. God has solved all of the other problems in my life by resolving them into facts or actions for me to take. I'm very happy with my life, and I'm very happy with everything AA has shown me. Thanks for listening.